Welcome to Timeline. Joining us this week is Professor Andreea Karpati. She teaches psychology of art at ELTE University, Met University here in Budapest. She's the UNESCO chairholder for science communication and multimedia in education. We will discuss such topics as the importance of visual literacy, the effects of technology on art today, the benefits of art therapy, and the connections between psychology and art. Stay with us. Professor Andreea Karpati is here with us. Professor, thank you for joining Timeline.
Well, I'm happy to be here. So let's hear the first topic you want to discuss today.
Can you tell us what exactly is psychology of art, or how do art and psychology fit into one another?
Psychology of art basically deals with us, the perceivers of productions of art on one side, and on the other side, it tries to look into the mind of the artist and into the work deeper than the normal viewer should, and find out how the artist signified content, messages to us that are more than just beauty, that wants to touch our souls. So psychology of art is about the creator and the perceiver, receiver at the same time.
Speaking of beauty that you mentioned, so what are the psychological aesthetics? I mean, we know what aesthetics are, but what are psychological aesthetics?
For example, psychological aesthetics deals with the types of signs we find beautiful and ugly, exciting and relaxing, rhythmic and not non-rhythmic, or just standing still. For example, many people feel bad at their workplace because the built environment and the way it is designed is too stressful for them, or else it's too boring for them. So psychologists who deal with art signs like color and shapes will be able to define how we feel when we look, when we perceive the visual surroundings. Of course, psychology of art also deals with music and movement, but my area is vision.
So are there rules of the aesthetics, actually, aesthetic rules for the composition, which are universal? So are there universal rules what makes something beautiful?
This is a question that not just artists and curators, but also commercial producers ask themselves many times. And the answer is always the context of time and place. Because if in one of my presentations I used an image of the Venus of Willendorf and Barbie the doll. No two images can be more different than that.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, and however, for thousands of years, the Willendorf Venus was the norm, the beautiful one. For some decades, Barbie was nice, and how I hear today, Barbie has not only been criticized, but also refashioned to look more like feminine heroes we want to see today. So it's time-bound and context-bound.
Speaking of Barbie, because you mentioned it, so what is your opinion, like in the last 10 years when we have these big debates about political correctness, and we heard, the whole affair happened when they tried to manufacture the Barbie doll to look more average, let's say?
Nobody wanted to have it, right?
Yes. But why, for example? I mean, if there's this whole policy that the society should be like more politically correct, why did nobody buy the doll, for example, that looked more average?
Because we do not want to buy average, we want to buy a dream. Little girls want to have dolls like princesses because they want to be like princesses. And of course, manufacturers have a big responsibility about drawing the line. Because Barbies were criticized because they suggested a body image that's unattainable. Actually, there are a few human Barbies. girls who went to plastic surgery and came out of the room looking more or less like Barbies and being very sick quite shortly afterwards. So yes, but dolls should look like our dreams, but manufacturers shouldn't suggest that our dreams can be 100% reality, and you should starve yourself to death or wear high-heeled shoes 20 centimeters just to match the ideal image.
Yes. Can you give us your thoughts on the definition of psychology and art, let's say? More of art. So art is a pathway to exploring your own depths.
Yeah, exactly. At one of my lessons, I showed a movie, a video of Marina Abramovic meeting Ulay, her one-time boyfriend, whom she hadn't seen for decades after the breakup. And of course, it can be just a lousy scene from a romantic movie, but it wasn't. It was art. So the boundaries of art and life are also narrow, like those of beauty and reality. But in this film, you could see the staging of the artist's self, herself being exposed to the audience, and then her vulnerability. Because this time, it was not a sharp knife, as during one of her performances before, that one of the audience members found it to actually stick into her body. It was much worse. It was her soul that was under attack. And we could see the fragility of the artist, but still her absolutely strong presence, both sides. You remember from the video when Ulay came in, he looked at his shoes and his jacket, and he knew it was going to be not life. It's what's going to be art. It's performed, it's directed in a way. However, it was meant to be spontaneous. So on psychology and art means knowing both. Artists know psychology of mankind instinctively in many, many respects.
Speaking of Marina Abramovic, you mentioned her as well. Would you say to some critics who claim, to put it simply, this is not art? Mm-hmm. So this is not art. We heard the last idea that, I mean, I'm simplifying the whole thing, that she wants to electrocute herself with 1 million volts, I think, something like that. So to those who say this is not art, what you say on these comments?
She wouldn't survive that. So what performance art is the name of the genre.
Yes.
And you can go to length where you shouldn't go. Of course, and I'm sure nobody will volunteer to electrocute her and then drag her dead body away, and we should have one less magnificent artist. Performance art has to finish at being art, which is to say, containing some sort of contemporary aesthetics. Sometimes it is not beautiful at all, as we all know. Our current, today's world is not beautiful at all, many times. So performance has to convey some sort of aesthetics. It has to convey messages that are relevant for the spectator. And these performances have to be organized the same way as a painting is, or a film. So when it's not organized, it has no profound messages, it is cheap. When it has no beauty, inherent depths, then of course it's not performance art, it is somebody being there up the stage.
So on the same pathway, let's say, so why do humans make art? I mean, we're the only species on Earth who make art. So why did we have this urge to create art?
Why do we help our fellows? This is another trait that only humans share. We help those from whom we cannot gain benefits, who are not our kids, who are not our friends. And still there is an instinct in us to be benevolent, to be good-willing. I think art belongs to the good side, to light side of human nature, to get out of life more than just food and love and power. So basically, these are the instincts that we share with animals. Art is entertainment. We shouldn't say it's not. Art is also about grasping the essence of the human condition. To tell you a big word, but it is so. Yesterday at the lesson I showed On Body and Soul, a film by Ildiko Enyedi.
Great film.
The great film, yes. And when you tell the contents of this film, you see it's about this semi-autistic woman and an old man falling in love. Oh. But she manifested the feelings of people whom we are unlikely to want to know. And this is also one of the big objectives for art, to show us what we do not want to know, but we have to know.
And art today is much more available. I think the most available that it ever was in history. Before it was reserved, let's say, for wealthy patrons, wealthy people, let's say like that. And today it's at our disposal. In film, it's so much easier to get a camera, to get a drone, to succeed, for example, on the internet, on YouTube. And the paintings themselves are also much more available because of the internet. So can you tell us about the positive effects, but also the negative effects that technology had on art today?
Yes. The positive effect, I think, metaphor for that is the video blog. The video blog couldn't have happened with a camera. One had to have a clever camera, a smartphone that allows you to film and is not expensive, and you can also edit it and provide sound that's normal. You can have subtitles and you can have effects. All are very important in vlogs. For example, in Hungary, when vlogging started, there was a tremendous amount of youngsters who all thought that it is a genre I can do easily, and those who prevailed, those who have lots of followers, are either those who talk rubbish loudly and are very funny and have a cat, but they're the first top 5 bloggers among them. They are filmmakers. I know one of them, Hollywood News Agency, for example. This guy has 2 degrees in communication and in television broadcasting from 2 lovely schools, ELTE and the Academy of Film and Theatre. And this guy has, fortunately, about 400,000 followers in one of his channels, because what he produces is closer to art than to non-art, to just nonsense. Okay, this is the good side. Bad side, just will be short, because I really like this conversation being not a monologue. I really appreciate your questions.
Thank you.
So the bad side is Pinterest and Instagram really, and part of Facebook, that people think they must document because they find the images beautiful. The clevers, the smartphones create images that are pseudo-art really, very realistic, very fancy. And people say, it is so nice, I have to share. Of course it's not nice, it is just average. And you don't have to share it, you shouldn't share it. So there is a lot of disappointment when you don't get enough likes simply because it's average. And on the other side, there is a lot of saying art should be realistic. Painting should be just like Instagram. And of course, these are bad sides. These are criteria art that shouldn't have, and these are artists that are not artists.
But speaking about vlogs, for example,
yeah.
So you, as I understood, you don't agree with those who say that's not filmmaking, that's not art as well, because I think that like many filmmakers, for example, in Hollywood especially, I guess here in Europe, in Hungary as well, like this whole phenomena, this whole revolution with Netflix, that they just said this is not cinema. And again, like at Cannes as well, I mean, as I read that Netflix doesn't want to send their films to the festival, actually. And I think Tarantino, that he said as well that digital versus film, it's not the same, that it's, I think that Tarantino said it's a devil's creation. So, yeah, it's a bit over-exaggerated, I think, but what's your thought about that? Let's say Netflix versus cinema.
With cinema. There are different forms of art for me. So I think art is evolving. For example, in the early Baroque, when you went to a market in the Netherlands, there were a lot of still lifes. Jan Steen had his still lifes, and nobody had his still lifes at stalls one by one. Jan Steen's were marvelous. The other ones were not very good. And still life as a genre was not much appreciated. Of course, everybody wanted to have it in the saloon, in the dining room, but that's all. And later on, we are just walking kilometers in museums where still lifes are hanging on the wall, Dutch still life paintings, and people explain to us vanity symbols, symbols of religious importance, because they are there. Contemporaries do not always see what is the relevance of a visual message. So I think the quality is the differentiating factor. If a Netflix film causes catharsis and lingers on, like Tarantino's movies that we still see after 20 or more years, and will see in 50 years at all film school lecture halls, there will be Tarantino, and also in the small movie halls there will be Tarantino in the city. So quality is a differentiating factor, and we, critics and researchers, have to be flexible.
But the intentions of filmmaker, let's say, so if we had Casablanca, let's say, or Citizen Kane, and it was made on film, and now, I mean, it can be watched on iPad, which is like this big screen, let's say. So like many Hollywood big shots filmmakers, they argue, is it the same film?
No.
If it was made for a big screen in a cinema, is it the same film, actually?
It's not the same experience. It is the same movie, the poor movie that is being used, like Mona Lisa is being used by lots of people for creating bags and T-shirts. So, and Mona Lisa is being reproduced in very small versions and in large versions. And large versions are liked much more. And when you go to the Louvre, you say, oh, is this the original? So originals have a bad life today because they can be reproduced. So I really believe that the moving, and actually this guy, the Hollywood news agency blogger, also says, go to the movies, look at the big screen. This movie, because he's doing movie criticism, don't watch it, don't steal it, don't watch it on your little gadget. Go to the movies, because there you can say, wow. So, okay, but that's just one genre. If you do vlogs, you are doing them for the small screen. They are also quite well enjoyable on your iPad. So yes, I think filmmakers have to worry because their films are abused on small screens. But they can also hope that we are still going to go to see them.
Yes, but so you think that technology changed a lot, the ways that today we appreciate art?
Yeah.
Film, paintings, whatever, you think that it changed the way that we appreciate it?
Yes. Yes, very much. Very much. We are being taught by technology, and we are being taught by our teachers. So if we are lucky, we are also being taught by masters of all sorts, like our mothers or people we meet in a museum who just gesture around a painting, and we stand and listen to what they have to say. It has to be learned, basically. Appreciation, we don't believe it because images are everywhere. But here at the Metropolitan University, for example, and also at my hometown, ELTE, we have courses that teach people who will teach people about art appreciation. It changes, but it must retain the old values as well.
Okay. So you spoke about vlogs as well. You said that everybody thinks that it's so easy to make a vlog. And you said that we should teach, actually. We should teach young students, young kids, to learn how to appreciate art. I think that Scorsese, he wrote an essay like a couple of years ago for New York Times on the importance of visual literacy.
Yep.
So he said, I quote, we need to teach young guys how to see moving images, how to interpret them, how to unlock their subtext and messages, how to read them for understanding the country they live in. So can you explain like what exactly, how would you define visual literacy, and why is it so important?
Visual literacy is important because we communicate through images more than we do with words. So when it started to become important when Microsoft decided to take Apple's way of icon usage on the screen, and we looked at a screen that was full of pictures. And we opened one of these pictures, and there were more pictures that instructed us what to do. And sometimes we were in trouble. We didn't know about size, the importance of size and color, and composition, relative distancing of different objects. And we instinctively started learning them because otherwise we couldn't open a page if we didn't find a little arrow. And then, of course, movies and the photographs of our family members started to just being pushed on us, and you have to make sense. In the old times, when you went to a job interview, they had like 2 sentences as an instruction: don't wear a miniskirt or a high cut. Now they have a handbook saying what your shoes should look like, and what kind of watch is appropriate if you are going to a multinational, and what if you are going to an arts agency, for example, where you could be an absolute failure and never called again when you go in the same type of jacket, and so forth. So there is a manual because we are wearing visual signs and symbols. And of course, art became funny, also very tricky. Visual literacy is also about, not just about visual communication, it's also about art appreciation. And we look at Jeff Koons, who has a big pink pig, for example, or an animal, and the price tag is $1 million. And we say, wow, why? And then comes someone like, I tell you another example, the shark of Damien Hirst. I showed it to my students at Faculty of Science and said that it's price. And they said, wow, it's not art. And then we started to discuss sharks. They were biology students partly. So they said, okay, it's very important that Hirst actually showcased the shark, a die-out species. And also it's quite beautiful, other students say, when you discard your notions about art and the standards.
But do you think that somebody who's an artist, no matter
Yes.
a painter or a filmmaker,
Yes.
that it's important for him as well, like to know, let's say, the basic rules, like how to express yourself visually? I think I read some from Scorsese as well, I think, that he said you should learn the rules first, because if you don't know the rules, you can call yourself an abstract painter, let's say. But that's because you don't know how to do it by the rules, let's say.
It's very difficult to be an abstract painter. If you look at the juvenilia, that is to say the youthful creations of abstract painters, you see that they could tremendously well organize colors in a realistic image. Of course, you see everybody's quoting Picasso saying that I could paint like Raffaello when I was 12, but it took a lifetime for me to paint like a child. So, which means that you have to learn different idioms and not forget your original instincts. So Picasso tried to retain his childhood capacity for visual rendering, but also wanted to learn, had to learn how to paint like Raffaello. So what are the basics is a good question. Do photographers have to learn how to draw with chalk? I don't think so. I think photographers have to learn other skills, like old-fashioned photography, where the machines did not help you. But
Yes.
painters, I think, still have to learn traditional drawing and painting before saying it's nonsense.
So do you think that let's call it visual literacy, do you think
Yeah.
that it should be taught in elementary schools, let's say high schools? Like the same, I guess, Hungary is the same. I'm from Croatia, and we have music class, art class as well, but we don't have film. And I can understand that, of course, you need a much bigger budget to get the cameras, the whole equipment. But do you think that we should teach film as well, like from the early age?
Oh, yeah, and actually that's what we are doing. We have a research group called the Visual Culture Research Group of the Hungarian Academy of Science and ELTE University. And that's my major project right now. We have 4 modules that we call Moholy Nagy visual modules. Laszlo Moholy Nagy, the Hungarian, was one of the Bauhaus masters who actually introduced contemporary machine-mediated technology in the education of painters and sculptors and craftsmen. So Moholy Nagy was right. We need to learn painting and photography and filmmaking and sculpting, everything, from an early age. So my group actually develops curricular modules on visual communication, visual media, and 2 others. But I think these 2 are very important. And we are starting at the age of 6.
And do you focus mostly on the traditional filmmaking, let's say, or do you teach actually as well these new technologies, like for vlogs, let's say, for example?
These are small kids, so we don't show
kids,
them whole
no
films.
vlogs, of course.
We don't show them whole films. We are showing them effects, aesthetic experiences, and we are showing them the tools. And of course, kids will start doing vlogs. That's in their nature. They will start doing interviews in their schools. But then they have to learn about how to do a good one. And they have to appreciate their own creation. So we do teach them how to criticize a moving image, a still image, a painting, whatever. So we teach them criteria that we discuss with them, because kids, we are teaching up to 16 right now. So they have to assess themselves. Because today everybody goes ahead, like you just said, and does video and photography and whatever. So even little kids have to be critical. First, because they have to criticize the media world around them. They shouldn't be lured into buying stuff that they don't really need, and that's ugly anyway. But we also want them to learn in order to criticize themselves. So to do better, because I think contemporary media world is a big asset. For example, for young scientists whom I'm teaching at the Faculty of Science at ELTE, who are learning video abstracts. It's the new genre of conferences where and journals, you have to hand in your video about your research. So young scientists have to learn how to do it.
Speak of video. So do you think in the next 5 years, 10 years, the video will take over film? Because if they say, that the picture says 1,000 words, we can say the video says 1,000,000 words, let's say. This battle, let's say, video versus film, that film doesn't have a chance?
It's the same question as printed book or just...
It's the same, actually. Yeah.
Just blogs, blog text. Or the same question as digital art and real art. See, when you work on a slab of marmor for months, and there you are, and then you do 3D printing, you see, much less time. No. I think everything stays until it is needed. And film is very much needed. So even though there are some films that get a high audience rate that we who are teaching filmmaking or aesthetics do not like so much, but film as a genre is so much needed by the people that I don't think it's going away. I think video will find the niches. For example, our students, secondary school students, are doing their own newsreels, news movies, news programs, because they realize that news programs are basically very dull. And young people do not want to see, yes, we have built it and it's ready, cut. Yes, it's better today than tomorrow. Or they don't want to say everything is gloomy, gloom and doom. So young people do not want to see either or. They want to see somehow their own version of reality. So they go to video. So I think video will find its genres.
And what is art therapy exactly? Because I heard that people who teach art therapy, that they always try to emphasize the difference between a child art therapy and a play therapy.
Well, art therapy is a process, a well-documented process, actually with different methodologies, to use the cathartic power of art for healing purposes. So when you make art, like the Buddhists create a mandala, a Buddhist priest, then you at once understand why art is healing. The repetitive movements, the quiet way of creating a mandala, the lengthy process of it, brings you into a meditation, a sort of stance, and you feel relieved and organized, like your mandala, when you finish. That is a good metaphor for me for art therapy. When you give shape to your fears, or if you don't give shape, you realize that you can't. Through fighting with the material, and you are discussing it with your peers and your tutor, your therapist, who gives you another task and another task according to his or her method, you go through processes that through talking you would never ever do. I also teach a course for art therapy students on child art, because that's my real field. And there they realize that in child art, simply children do work on their own healing processes quite often, and it is your task to channel that and to create a good therapeutic process.
Where is it most used? I mean, the art therapy.
Yes, first, who can be an art therapist? That is also a basic question. In Hungary, the rule is that you have to be either a psychologist or a doctor, or an artist or art educator, musician or music educator, dancer or dance educator. Then you come into training, and of course you get a different training, because scientists have to get a creativity training, while the artists have to be knowledgeable about the biology and psychology of art therapy. Okay. So these two types of experts can be an art therapist. I couldn't be, because I'm an art historian. I have nothing to do with either the creative side or the healing side. So I couldn't. Where it is being practiced, school psychologists, when they are trained, they use it very often. But basically, it's being used outside school in centers that a few people get to, which is a pity. Much more people should. In houses of culture, in hospitals, for example, there are these therapists who practice. I would really, and I'm inviting art teachers who I think have this kind of feel to it, to undergo training and to practice it in their teaching.
So I think that everybody more or less needs art therapy, let's say, like to discover something about themselves as well.
Yeah. I think we all have to find our art form, actually. It may not be visual arts. It may be something utterly different. Maybe gardening. Gardening is a beautiful genre also in art if you do it in an organized and high-level way. So, I think we have to work more on ourselves in order to be better for other people.
Speaking about that, I mean, it's not a visual art, but famous, let's say, screenwriting guru, Robert McKee, he said that he sees a lot with his students that, like you said also, that they miss an art form. So, for example, that somebody has a talent for theater writing, but he's doing films.
I think you shouldn't start out trying everything, but trying one thing and thinking, why don't I like this? Why am I not too good at it? What are my strengths and weaknesses, basically? You can, of course, not everybody can or should go to a long process of psychotherapy. Sometimes talking with friends does a lot. It does good to you. And also, if you are reflective on your creations and on your performance in everyday life. When I first went to lecture at the Faculty of Science, coming from the Faculty of Liberal Arts, it was a disaster. I was my usual playful self, like here with you, film students at Met. I showed a lot of visuals and showed some data and some facts. And the students thought, gosh, the woman doesn't know a thing. So I found my weakness. I was not responsive to my audience. I heard students, talked with students, the same I suggest to you too, being in the film industry, just talk. And then next time I said, in a study performed by Stanford psychologists in 1916, this was done. Okay, I also showed visuals, and I was also entertaining, but the facts and non-facts part changed drastically. So you have to be self-reflective and get to know your audience.
So how important in this whole teaching process, how important is the role of museums? I mean, I guess as an art student, I mean, you need to bring your students to the museums to learn, like you said as well many times today, how to appreciate the arts there.
When I first took my children to a museum, I decided what to show them, and I was in trouble because one of my children was a boy very, very interested in everything technical and how things are made. And the other was a girl who was interested in people, how people respond to each other and how it can be represented, relationships, connections.
So it's a great combination, actually, two of them.
Yeah, I think so. and I simply went to the museum first and looked at the works and tried to find the common denominator, which works of art that might be interesting for both of them, and it was the narrative. Most observers love stories. So this is one thing. Second thing is, many people are snobs. So if, when as a young art history student I had to guide people, that was my university task, and I looked at them and their dresses gave the clear message that I'm rich, I was everywhere, and I'm going to get you if you do not tell me the slightest detail. And there I knew I had to emphasize the price of each work, the importance that no other museum, but no other museum has so many El Grecos that the Budapest Museum of Fine Art. Till that time, nobody cared. But then they looked up, oh, really? No, in Central and Eastern Europe, not any other. In Spain, you can see more El Grecos. Oh, really? So most people are snobs. They want to see the best, the biggest, the most expensive. Right. So in terms of finding the key to your viewers, people are groups. So you don't have to talk to like your two kids. You don't have a chance to talk to every individual, but you have to have a sense, a feel of what they know.
With the audience, for example, what are the differences to making art or art appreciation closer to young kids, let's say like elementary school, primary school, and art students? I mean, it's different ages.
Two different ages.
Generations, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. There is one thing that these groups share, funnily, that they are all interested in what the artist wanted to do with this image. How about the artist? Even young children are very interested in the artist as a creative personality. And of course, art students are interested in their colleague and what the struggles and their choices and their context. Why Rembrandt, for example, has selected voluntarily to become very poor and to get marginalized because he wanted to paint in a style that nobody else liked. Nobody in Amsterdam appreciated. And it was an artist's choice. Of course, for little children, I would show the same Rembrandt. They self-portraits, slides, of course, and ask them, what's the difference? Oh, he's old at the end. What else? But he has such nice clothes at the beginning, at the end, he's poor. What do you think, why? And then, quite funnily, little kids sometimes arrive to the right solution because he wanted to be a different painter than those who are paid. Yeah. So this is exactly what a little kid told me when I saw this sequence,
amazing,
and after
yes.
much discussion. Yeah. And then they said, then I like these works that I didn't like before better. Because you are sure, yes, it's true. Old people like my granddad, they are sorry, like miserable, like this one, and I can feel. So, okay, bring it closer to the world of their own. That's what I said, narrative, and also emotions, and also the creating personality.
And do you think about that school kills creativity? I saw actually...
I am a teacher.
You are a teacher, actually.
Yeah,
But
so I shouldn't say that.
But let's say the traditional approach.
Yeah.
In most, let's say, art classes in high schools, especially in Europe, let's say like countries like Hungary, Czech Republic,
Yes.
Croatia as well. I watched an interesting talk by Ken Robinson on TED. The school systems kill creativity among
Yes.
students, especially kids.
Yeah.
So do you agree with that?
No, I shouldn't. I wouldn't be able to stand in front of teachers to be authentic and say, guys, go ahead. Teaching is fun, and you will make a lot of difference. Schools kill creativity when they are bad. They have a bad curriculum, they have a rigid director who tells teachers to teach exactly according to the curriculum, and where there are no other schools, so there is no competition. Because when there is competition, then the director will think twice before killing creative efforts. So I think schools are different. Ken Robinson's talk on creativity is a wonderful urge for all of us. It's a great talk. Millions of people have seen it and said, oh, I'm not like that. How good. I have to tell the teacher to look at the video. Okay? So, no, it doesn't. Let me tell you another theory. That was also in one of my talks. Howard Gardner's U-shaped curve. Howard Gardner is the multiply intelligences person who showed us that there is more to it than just verbal intelligence. And about child art, he said, young kids are marvelous, but then they get worse and worse and worse, and then they go to school because they go to school, So they are marvelous, then kindergarten starts killing, and schools complete the killing process. And then U-shaped, so you have to go down, up again. The other part of the U is the talented kids who break away from schools. Our teachers, of course, were outraged and said, no, never. Then they started to say, oh yeah, when you start teaching too early, you may kill part of the instinct that will be good for you, useful later when you teaching the rules.
So what is the right age to start teaching kids about arts? What's the right age? In your opinion?
About arts, you can always teach about rules of art.
Rules of arts, let's say.
Rules of art making. I wouldn't do it before, let's say, 8 or 9 years. I wouldn't teach them about perspective. I wouldn't. I would just let them get acquainted with technology, look at a lot of art, get acquainted with real technology, stuff, materials, touch and feel and smell. And then when they have a lot of experiences, when they have created and want to create better, then around the age of 8 or 9, our teachers can say, okay, if you want, I can teach you some rules, and then you will be better.
Thank you for being with us tonight.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you had a great time. See you next week.